Well, have you noticed the difference in the feel of the air over the last 12 to 24 hours? It certainly is a lot fresher with winds now coming in off the Atlantic. Thanks for clicking on to the Monday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Like I said, a very, very fresh feel compared to what we've seen over the weekend. Of course, 32.2 was achieved at Coningsby in Lincolnshire yesterday afternoon. That actually ties the UK's warmest temperature of 2023. We did get a 32.2 at Chertsey in Surrey back earlier in the month, and yeah, the temperature reached the same value yesterday afternoon. We're not going to see anything like that for the next couple of weeks, actually, as we do have a very different regime now in place once we finally broke that ridge and the stubborn area of high pressure that has been dominating really since the back end of spring all the way through the majority of June, of course. This was the scene, by the way, yesterday afternoon in Enniscorthy. I think that's the way you pronounce it, in County Wexford, Ireland, yesterday. Flash floods, but also large accumulations of hail on the streets here in this County Wexford town yesterday afternoon. Quite an extraordinary situation, actually, as that cold front moved through and enhanced showers and thunderstorms over this region of the country yesterday. So, certainly quite the spectacle, that's for sure, during the course of yesterday here. The NAO is going firmly into negative territory, by the way, and it looks as if we do have a situation developing where the trough will deepen over the UK or close to the UK over the next week or a couple of weeks, actually. The MJO has now shifted, and it looks as if we have seen that response now. Now, the tropical Atlantic was very active for a period of time, and I want to show you what's going on because we've got a trough over the eastern United States at the moment. That will then shift east out over the western Atlantic and deepen a ridge. It's going to actually enhance and boost a ridge of high pressure over the North Atlantic. And in turn, downstream of that, it's going to deepen the trough over the UK and Ireland here. It looks as if we will get, of course, little surges of heat ahead of areas of low pressure, of course. There is plenty of heat stored up down across Iberia at the moment. So, of course, as systems approach, we will probably tap some of that heat and humidity. But on the whole, it looks as if we are entering a cooler phase that may linger well into the month of July, kind of leaning towards a kind of cool first half versus warm second half of July. I think that is where we're going, and I will have the June forecast, or July, should I say, the July forecast issued in the next couple of days. So this is off the CFSV2, by the way, and you can see here the upcoming 7 days. So this takes out to the 2nd of July, of course, and you have, for the majority, with the exceptions of far southern Ireland and the UK, it is below average through the next 7 days. And even week 2, it has a fairly cool north versus a slightly warmer south. And of course, we have got the warm water surrounding the UK at the moment, so that does temper the kind of chill that would probably otherwise be a fairly cool pattern. Actually, certainly the warm water surrounding the UK will temper any kind of chill. And then the CFSV2 for the period 9th through the 16th of July does have things warming up quite substantially during the second half of July, as you can see here. So looking at the 850s or 500 millibar, I'll get there in the end. You can see here what is showing. So we've got this negative, we've got now the positive down over the areas you would typically expect. We've got, of course, the return of the westerlies, which is quite often the case after a fairly blocky, high pressure dominated pattern during the second half of May or most of May, and then into the month of June. Quite often you do see a breakdown taking place during the final 10 days of June. Exactly the dynamics in why that happens, I'm not entirely sure. I did send a tweet to a private message to the Met Office asking, did they have any explanation as to why we see this return to the westerlies quite often? Looking back at history, that is quite a common occurrence during the latter half of June, where all of a sudden we get back into this Atlantic driven pattern. Now, I do know that we do, of course, when we have these blocky patterns that are tough to break down, eventually they do break. And it's usually driven by the Manjulian oscillation and other factors, of course, as well, as we advance through a particular season, whether it be winter or indeed summer. The pattern does tend to repeat itself, and eventually that will break. And that is exactly what we're seeing now. So, this is the upcoming 7 days, a strong negative now over top of the positive, of course, opens the door to the Atlantic, of course. And then into the second week, so this is the 2nd through the 9th of July, we've got the negative to the north, positive to the south, hence why we've got warmer conditions to the south and fresher conditions further north underneath that trough. Then, of course, we'll start to see the model indicating that pressure starts to build significantly. We'll watch this space and see what happens. But certainly the negative NAO is quite an interesting development. We've also got a modestly negative Arctic oscillation as well. And indeed, if you look at the GFS ensemble here, this is, of course, the Atlantic view. Now, we did have, remember, Cindy that developed over the tropical Atlantic, lifting northwards up towards eastern Canada. And that may be playing a role as well in terms of pumping the ridge over the North Atlantic and then deepening the trough over us and our part of the world. So as we play through this sequence here, you notice here the big ridge over the north of Mexico, hence why we're seeing record-breaking heat here, also in Texas. But notice these negatives running over the top and northern portion of the United States, then dropping into the southeastern half of the United States. Now, notice here that the negative deepens over the eastern US. This is quite important, actually, because you've got this negative here over the Great Lakes. That is going to deepen over the northeastern United States. In turn, that boosts the high over the far east of Canada. And then watching this negative here southeast of Greenland, watching how it slides over and into the British Isles here, it kind of retreats back up towards Iceland, if you notice here. But as that positive starts to become stronger over the North Atlantic, watch how the negatives start to drop into the northern half of the British Isles here. Now, this is off the GFS ensemble, so it's the emergence of all the runs rather than it just being one individual raw model data. It's actually more of a trend, if you will, and that is very interesting indeed. Look at the positive actually over the Caribbean. That's going to dry things out and heat things probably to record levels in this neck of the woods here. But it's very interesting how the evolution of this pattern is taking place, and I think we can attribute this to the Madden-Julian oscillation, of course, shifting out of the Atlantic and then into the Pacific. And I think there's an enhanced phase going through the Indian Ocean as well. But notice here that as we play right through the Friday next week, so this is the 7th of July, we still have that negative over the UK. And it looks as if it wants to linger. And then you notice here we don't really have much of a signal over the UK and Ireland all the way through to the 10th and even towards the middle portion of July. It looks as if it doesn't indicate much of a strong positive, that's for sure. So it's going to be very interesting to see as we play forward here what takes place. It may linger a little bit longer than what some folks are suggesting, this negative here, this trough. And this is part of the overall forecast that I had way back at the end of May when I issued the summer forecast. I did have the best period probably for Scotland of the entire summer, possibly during the month of June, then a more unsettled spell during the month of July. But there is possibilities of some surges of heat coming out of Spain and Portugal into the UK. So it's not all clear cut, just a negative and rain constantly. Not the case, but certainly we've got a very different pattern to what we had before. So look at this here, even the overview chart of weather charts. This is the ECMWF, by the way, so I'm showing you the differences in GFS versus ECMWF so that I'm not biased towards one model or leaning towards or even dependent on one model run. I'm showing you all the different factors. So this is Friday, the end of this week. We've got a 982 low just to the south of Iceland, associated frontal system moving through the UK, bringing another spell of wind and rain. Remember, as soon as, quite often, when the government starts to raise the alarm bell with regards to drought, what happens? Always, it seems to be that hosepipe bans are mentioned, droughts mentioned, and the pattern then changes, and we see a very different type of pattern. Already we're starting to see this turnaround take place. We're starting to see more rainfall in the very driest areas of the UK, i.e., the Northwest Highlands, of course. And we will see this continuation of unsettled conditions. These areas of low pressure, it's circulating, rotating beneath that upper level trough that is fairly deep now. That will take us out of the month of June into the month of July. And there we go. There's that strong mid-Atlantic ridge of high pressure that you would typically expect. That is a position that keeps the westerlies going and us very unsettled indeed, or certainly more unsettled than what we would have been, of course. So you can see here the ECMWF model keeping those areas of low pressure running into the UK and bringing the fresher and more unsettled conditions, and certainly wetter conditions also here. So it's going to be interesting to see what effect that may have on the overall temperatures of both the Atlantic and also the UK pattern also. So a fresher feel across the southeast, as you can see here, compared to yesterday and the day before. Much fresher conditions the further north you go and west you go also. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll see you again hopefully tomorrow with more. Bye for now.